Hi everyone, it's Travis here with Coyote Moon Creative, your Squarespace web designer. In today's tutorial, I'm going to be chatting with you about optimizing the footer navigation. Now, the footer navigation is the static entity that lives at the bottom of your website on every single page. So it's not going to go away. Although Squarespace does offer the ability for you to hide a header and footer on any given page, for the most part, websites typically have a footer that remains static on every page of the site. And you can think of the footer as sort of a mini navigation, an area where you might want to display things like your privacy policy, your terms and conditions, potentially a newsletter sign-up form, which you'll see here in the lower left corner of this site I built for an abstract artist. It also includes oftentimes, a site title or a logo image, a tagline. Copyright is another really important facet of a footer. Placing your copyright with your LLC or your business entity and the year is always a good bet, as well as displaying your social media profile. So if you're big on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, you can display those social icons, as you'll see in the right-hand side of this footer here. So today's tutorial is really all about maximizing your use of that footer real estate space. I said it at the beginning, but I'll say it again. It is one of the most overlooked facets of a website. And really, it's a way to button things up, really bring the cohesion and the design and everything into a nice flow. And it's also just a really great opportunity for you to increase conversions. When somebody gets to the bottom of any given page, I always teach my clients that you should have some sort of next step, whether it's a call to action, a link to another internal page. In this instance with the footer, we're giving them a lot of content to chew on so that they're not really getting stuck on any given page, and they're able to easily navigate through the site in a way that really feels intuitive. So without further ado, today I'm going to cover a few things. Formatting, taking a look at sort of the general scope of the footer layouts and really customizing them to your brand and your aesthetic. And then also taking that a step further and baking this into every website, which is removing the default link underline that Squarespace places on links in the footer and replacing it with a rollover text color. So in this instance, we're going to be changing the underline default link to no underline. And then when the white text gets hovered on, it actually turns to this brand yellow color that we've added here. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do today is I'm actually just going to I'm going to duplicate this section so that I'm not messing with any of the live links here in the footer. So to do that, I've already saved this section. I'm just going to click Add Section, Save Sections, and then I'm going to add another footer here. So I know they're stacked one on top of another, but this is just the best way to showcase this specific element within the tutorial. Okay, so what I like to do is I like to click Control G, and that's going to bring up your grid, right? So now we have our grid that we're working with, and we can see that it is 12 rows, columns on each side, making it a 24 column grid. We can affect the spacing by clicking this edit section. Squarespace's default value for the row count here is 11. The gap is an important one too. So if you want to bring those collection, explore, connect buckets closer together, we can actually decrease the value of the gap on the vertical plane. And we can also decrease or increase the value of that gap on the on the horizontal or the vertical plane. So to do that, we click the little three dots. As we can see, tighten up, spread apart. I actually particularly like Squarespace's default value of 11 on the horizontal and 11 on the vertical. So, if you're not somebody that really needs to like fine tune that, I would just leave the default values. Fill screen, that allows you to drag an element all the way to the very top. In this instance, I always like to give a little breathing room here. That's why you'll see essentially um, two grid blocks on the bottom and two on the top for little spacing. So that's that. And basically, what I like to do is Squarespace will give you like a preset value here, right? They'll typically give you a text block with a heading and maybe a link or two below it. You can actually just hover over that and click duplicate, and that will allow you to create a brand new one. And then from there, these are basically just all pages, right? I like to think of, what pages are going to be most impactful. I also like to think about hierarchy, right? People are always typically going to read from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. So in this instance, Explore as a heading is a way for site visitors to explore my recent work, my collections, and my portfolio. Like these are the most important facets, right? So that's why I have them here on the left. Basically, I've just added them in all caps to match the other look and feel of other pages on my site. And then I've hyperlinked, and you can do that by just clicking the link button and choosing an internal page here. You can also choose to send this to a file that you've uploaded on your website, an email address, or a phone number. So there's a lot of different options for the hyperlink functionality there. The logo image has been uploaded. I've also added a little tagline below it. And so you'll see here, this logo image takes up 3, 6 on the grid and 3 down. And then I've actually just sort of superimposed the Exploring Abstraction tagline into that logo so that it looks like it's a part of it, but it's actually a text block overlaid on top of an image block. And then I've changed the color too, just to match some of the other yellow elements it's sort of my highlight accent color throughout the site. And then I've added this copyright. So you can see, copyright 2025 Ritu Raj, all rights reserved. And so I have used the paragraph 3, but instead of just keeping it within its container, I've actually expanded. And so I've used this site scale or this text scale functionality to scale it so that it fits perfectly beneath that Exploring Abstraction tagline, right? So everything's looking very tight. Everything's looking very uniform. And when somebody comes and lands on this footer section, they're going to be very engaged with both my brand, my logo design, my colors. They're going to be encouraged to sign up for my newsletter. They're also going to be encouraged to explore all the other greatness that is my site, right? They can connect with me if they want. They can reach my contact page. They can read a bit more about me as an artist, my statement, my bio, Exploring Abstraction, and then my social links. So again, you can really think of this footer area as this mini navigation and this broader view into pages that might not fit neatly into the header, but that are very important. This particular client doesn't have a privacy policy. He doesn't have terms and conditions, cookie policy added, but you could very easily add that. You might even add that as its own sort of subsection. And to do that, you could add like a line block, right? So you could pull this line block down below here. You could extend it the full width. And instead of, let's see here. And then you could pull this down and you could have your privacy policy below this line, right? So privacy policy terms and conditions. For whatever reason, Squarespace likes to throw a little period in there when you add a policy. So in a general sense, this is kind of what that would look like, right? So you're breaking up, again, it's all about hierarchy. So you've got all the most important facets there on the top. And then, oh, by the way, if somebody wants to dive into your privacy policy, dive into your terms and conditions, they still have that easily accessible at the bottom of every single page. Awesome. Okay, and the formatting on this obviously, needs a little work. This is just a demonstration. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to take a look at these elements, and we're going to see how we can remove the default link underline and add a rollover effect. Okay, so I am going to copy and paste the code for this into the footer navigation. And now I'm just going to do a shift / and then type in CSS into the CSS editor. And from here, we can get a nice clean line. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy and paste the entire CSS code here. So now what I've done is I've told the browser that when you are in the footer section of my website, which is here and here subsequently, any link, which is this A, footer A, this is the declaration, right? The color is white. That's the default link color. We're saying now that the text decoration should be none. And the important part here is just telling the browser that this is important. Oftentimes that will push that, that design update live. The transition we've added as 0.2 seconds and ease in and out. So that's that part, right? We've essentially told the browser that we don't want a text decoration. We don't want an underline when we hover over this, right? Excuse me. We don't want an underline before we hover over it because Squarespace will actually display that underline link as default. We just kind of think that that doesn't look great in the footer, and we want to update that design. So we're saying text decoration none. The original color is white, and then this new couple lines of CSS is saying the same thing in the footer. Any link, any instance of a link. So again, footer A. When we hover over it, we want the color to change from white, which is this original value, to this yellow. This is a hex color value, right? So now when we hover over this area, we see the removal of the underline link, the default link underline, and now the yellow color. Okay, so that's a crash course in putting together a nice, tight, intuitive, engaging footer. There's obviously a lot more we could explore here. There's a lot of customizations you could add in terms of line height, spacing, colors, fonts. I could even do a whole tutorial here on tightening up this newsletter block. But for now, I think that is a pretty good representation of our footer. And I'm going to go ahead and remove this one so that it's not duplicate. I think that's a pretty good representation of building out a footer. Let me know in the comments if you guys found this useful. I know, again, that the footer can be an oftentimes overlooked facet of a website, but I really believe that it's an important one. So thank you so much for listening. Looking forward to producing another great tutorial on the Squarespace platform. Thanks, everyone.